Hi Wayne.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
This is good, isn't it?
This is lovely. I think it is quite cold and wet in Melbourne where we are today, so hopefully people are watching from some warmer places.
Exactly, yes.
Um, well, we are just going to have a quick chat today and answer a few questions. But to start, I would like to acknowledge that Wayne and I are both coming to you from Wurundjeri country today, and acknowledge that the Wurundjeri people are the traditional owners of this land, and we pay respects to their elders, both past and present, and particularly to anyone that might be joining us today. So Wayne, we put the call out to see some of the questions that our followers would like you to answer. So I do have some questions I'd like to ask you today.
Mhm.
Last time we spoke, you talked about the fact that Greenfleet takes practical climate action. And so the first question I have for you is, what are some of the projects that Greenfleet has coming up in 2022?
Great, okay. Well, there's lots of projects, so let me just give you a bit of an overview. Um, it's going to be a very exciting year. So first, it'll be an exciting year because after COVID for 2 years, I think we're all looking forward to a wonderful 2022. So here's hoping everyone watching this has a great year next year. So the big project we're about to embark on, we're starting to plant just after Christmas, is our project at Noosa. So our Noosa project is a fantastic project, 1,100 hectares just out of Noosa. It was stripped clear in the 70s and pine forests were put in, and those pine forests are now coming out. And as the pine forests are coming out, Greenfleet will be planting native forests, and these forests are going to be habitat for koalas. So really big thread for our work over the coming years is the creation of koala habitat. So all power to those green groups that are looking to conserve koala habitat. I'm sure all of us are supporting that, and that's fabulous work. We also believe in the ecosystem restoration movement that we need to be restoring habitat, and that's what we're doing big time. So Noosa is not only important for all those reasons, but Greenfleet is increasingly talking about the link between ecosystem restoration and social restoration. And so we've worked very closely with our partners, Cubby Cubby Indigenous Corporation, who are the traditional owners of that area of the Sunshine Coast. And this year I've signed an Indigenous land use agreement with that group, which was an enormous undertaking, a lot of work for both parties. But out of that has come a great opportunity for us to directly work with Cubby Cubby to help them bring more kids back to country and to bring jobs and resources to them over the next 4 to 5 years. So Noosa is a huge project for us. There's more in detail on our website, but we're looking for people to really put their shoulder to the wheel, to tell your friends about it, and in particular to get some corporate organisations to support that work. We'll also be doing 5 hectares of a trial up in the Daintree. So we do all of our work is in the eastern seaboard of Australia at the moment. But we're very interested in rainforest restoration and the work we do as
All right,
the perils of live TV. Is that when someone runs in and smashes something? I can't even blame the
edit
cat.
that out later.
I'm afraid I can't blame the cat. That was just because the phone buzzed. So there we go, technology. So Daintree is very exciting because we'll be working closely with Jappelbina and with Queensland Trust for Nature on a site just near the Daintree River and the Daintree National Park. So an opportunity to do some really great work on in cassowary country, very important area for us to be working on. Similarly, we'll be working in other places such as throughout Queensland, looking at, we're doing some experimental draft aerial seeding at a site, which is pretty interesting for us. So that's using drones to do seeding. We'll be going back to Barolin, near Bundaberg, and some of you may know the fantastic work we've been doing there for many years now, which started out with the Disney Corporation and Prince Trust of Australia. which is focused on protecting turtles by creating a green curtain at Mon Repos. So that is a very exciting project, doing a little bit more planting that needs to get done. And then finally, we're also working in the middle of Victoria. We've just planted up to 20 hectares of grasslands, native grasslands, in conjunction with Jaja Warung, and we are hoping to expand that kind of work in the future. So lots of experimental work involved in projects around the country, but also up in Queensland looking at some blue carbon work as well. So as you can hear, Beck, we're doing a lot of new stuff, but of course every year we relentlessly plant. Next year it'll be 350,000 tonnes of carbon will be put into our forests to be sequestered through the next 100 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks, Wayne. There's some really amazing projects coming down the line. Another question that we had was specifically about habitat restoration in South Gippsland. Are you able to talk to us a little bit about our work in that region?
Great. Okay. So that's an interesting question. So I think my view would be that Gippsland has probably got a huge competitive advantage. The way we measure carbon in our plantations is through a thing called FullCam, which is a national carbon accounting approach run by the government with CSIRO. And Gippsland has incredibly rich carbon per tonnes per hectare. So a fantastic opportunity for us to work there. We've been down there for some time now. We've currently got 4 properties that we've purchased ourselves. 3 of those, one's already fully planted out. Beautiful, beautiful property that is a joy. It's about an hour and a quarter from Melbourne by car, so people can get down to see it, which is very exciting for us. But we've also just bought a farm down there called Glendalough, and that's 220 hectares. Our hypothesis is that we can restore that ecosystem and still keep it as a productive farm. So this is saying, and we'll do that because we're measuring at the moment, we're measuring soil carbon, and we're going to be working with 2 farmers, a lovely young couple with their kids who we're putting on there, and that's going to be a very exciting project. Now, that's really about carbon, but of course this is a beautiful area of the world. If any of our viewers ever get a chance to get down there, one of the things that's really important is the Strzelecki koala, a specific koala down there which is threatened. This whole area was clear felled for for wood for Melbourne years ago, and so the Strzelecki koala is a really important the creation of habitat for Strzelecki koala is really important. We've already done that. We've sighted a koala on one of our properties already, and we intend to track that fairly closely. There's a whole group of people who are interested in this topic, so I'm very excited to be able to link up with them to be able to do more work on that. I think in the long run, connecting to local Indigenous groups, giving our supporters who live in the city the chance to get direct access to the site so they can walk around them. Looking at things like soil carbon, which is a very innovative way of going about this, which hopefully, the way we're approaching it, will link improving soil carbon with regenerative farming practices. So there's a bit of jargon there, but basically changing the way we farm to improve the ecosystem. We think that's the future of the agricultural services. We're a small player, but we think we can do that practically and pragmatically ourselves and then demonstrate it to other people. So very important. And I think lastly, we're still looking to do more work down there. So keen to make that connection for some of the big organisations, farming organisations, supermarkets and so forth, to connect them back to the farms that deliver meat to all of us who buy meat in supermarkets.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I think the thing that Greenfleet does really well is practical action and enables people to take practical climate action, which is really important. But that said, a very important climate conference is coming up, and that is the UN Climate Change Conference in COP26, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. So can you tell us a little bit about why this particular conference is so important this year?
Yes, well, again, I'm sure our viewers are right up on this one. This is probably, now I have to sadly confess here, Beck, that I was attending COP back in the 90s. A long time ago. So I've been part of this process, working with other organisations at the global level. So I've seen a lot of talk. So I'm fairly cynical, or at least sceptical about this. But I think it would be clear to anyone who's following this, the last month has been extraordinary. Changes going on. The pressure that our own Prime Minister, I understand, has now said he will be attending. Anyone who, I don't read Murdoch newspapers, but if I did, it would be a fun thing to see the change that they've gone through after so many years of climate denial and making it so difficult for public policy in this country. But I think there's a couple of actual threads. So one thread that I think is important is, as you know, or you may know, there's been a conference of parties going on at the moment around biodiversity, which is the second great unfurling slow crisis this century. And of course, Greenfleet has a foot in both camps. We take climate action through promoting ecosystem restoration and therefore biodiversity. So we care very much about both of them. There's been a lot of work to bring those two together. I'm not sure it's worked, to be honest. I think there's quite a way to go, because most of the big work happening at the global level tends to be around energy systems. Having said that, I think we're going to see a lot of nature-based solutions, as they're called, the jargon, coming out of Glasgow. And I think that's a great thing. So all power to the people who do that. This is what we do anyway, but more people who can support it, or the more people who go off and do it themselves. We're a not-for-profit, we're in this for climate impact. We'd love to see more people taking action more often. So I think the nature and this connection between biodiversity and climate change is going to be a big one. But I think it's also the argument around zero net emissions, which has been, focused in Australia now for the last couple of weeks. And I'm not sure what the final outcome is, but I understand it's pretty close in terms of where the coalition's getting to. I think I have to say I'm fairly cynical about that. I'm cynical because it's taken so long for us to get to this. This is a lost decade, potentially 2 lost decades, when we could have taken so much action and come such a long way. Having said that, we are where we are. You can't rewrite history. We have to do what we need to do. And I think it's therefore important to remember that long-term work is very important. That Greenfleet protects our forests. We strive for up to 100 years. And so we think to the end of the century. That's where our board and our staff are focused. But that only works if you take action now. So you've got to have short and medium term actions that will allow you to confidently be able to think long term. So the two have to go together. What we don't want, and I think this would be a disastrous outcome, is that yes, there's agreement, net zero emissions 2050, but no clarity around what happens through the rest of this decade, which is the critical decade, undoubtedly. We need to transform our energy system much quicker. So for all those reasons, I think there's a lot of opportunity here to both, in a nuanced way, very difficult to do in our public policy debate because everything's very adversarial, but in a nuanced way say, yes, long-term targets are important by all means, but we need to see that is coupled with short and medium-term actions. And I would be very disappointed. So COP26, beyond the theatre of COP26, and I've been to plenty of COPs. I was in Paris and in Copenhagen and so on. And so I've been through the global theatre of it. But I think in the end, as I think everyone knows about Greenfleet, I want to see practical action. And so I would be very disappointed if this is all, by Christmas, if we haven't got not just roadmaps and, this is targets and so on, but this is how it will be reflected in the budget. This is what will happen next. And certainly some targets around changing our energy infrastructure, which is Australia's really big contribution to this debate. Enormous opportunity around renewables that, I'm certainly a small voice in this, but I think we know that we have a great place, a great opportunity to take advantage of renewables in this country.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Wayne, for sharing all of your knowledge with us today. I think there's going to be a lot of news as we head in, through the rest of October and into November. So please, as our supporters and our followers, feel free to send us through any questions that you have about what's happening over the next few weeks and about anything regarding our work. We'd love to hear from you. So that is it from us today, but we'll speak to everyone again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Right. Thanks, Beck.
Thanks, Wayne.